Welcome back to Mortuary Mayhem, a podcast by funeral service professionals for funeral service professionals, where any day above ground is a good one.
All right, welcome back, folks. Today we have Chase Downs from Gather, what I would call one of the most premier web-based data management systems for your funeral home. They're on the cutting edge of this industry. It's really the more modern version of what we're doing, right? So why don't we introduce you and tell us a lot about the story of Gather and how this came about.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So, Chase Downs, head of sales and marketing over here at Gather. Been here for 2.5 years now. Surprise, surprise for a lot of people that are probably in the tech side and in the death care space. I did not have any previous experience in death care. But, after personal loss that I've had in my life, I looked at this opportunity and I said, you know what, I really want to learn about what it is like to be a funeral director. And needless to say, I have learned that there are so many different hats that a funeral director wears at the end of the day. And Dan, I know you know that better than a lot of people, obviously, right? But that's kind of what got me into working for Gather. And so getting to talk with funeral homes and crematories every day and figure out what kind of a system they do use to manage their operations on a day-to-day basis and kind of figure out, is Gather a good fit for you? Are you a good fit for Gather? Has been really, really fun just to kind of educate people about that sector. So, and we'll obviously talk a little bit about the technology side and the technology space. There's, we both know that there is an opportunity in this profession, a major, major opportunity for funeral homes and crematories to just elevate everything that they're doing. From chain of custody to their pre-need processes to their aftercare process, down to the actual arrangement conference with the family. So lots of opportunities there, but kind of getting back to Gather's origin story. So Zach Chatterton, our founder and CEO, he actually really had a personal story about why he decided to get started with Gather. And it's been a passion project that he's been working on for over 12 years now. And really where it stems from is when he was a kid. So actually rewind a little bit further. So he wasn't even born yet at this point. And his father went up to his mother and said, "Hey, I love you. I'm going on a fishing trip with my friends, and I'll see you when I get back." And unfortunately, he never ended up coming back and passed away on the fishing trip. And Zach remembers, when he finally got to an age where he could talk to his mom about it, trying to remember his dad and who his dad was. He talked to his mom about, "Mom, what was it like working with the funeral home and the funeral director? Like, I can only imagine that it was incredibly overwhelming. You're obviously trying to work through processing the grief of losing your husband." And he didn't know what to expect for the answer. And when she came back and kind of gave Zach an answer, she said, "Zach, working with that funeral director was single-handedly the biggest blessing that I had in that process itself. Trying to navigate the grief, trying to work through all the different tasks that go with planning a loved one's funeral service can be very overwhelming. But that funeral director gave me peace of mind every step of the process and really held my hand through it all." And that really resonated with Zach, because I think that there's a lot of professions out there, even that are service-based careers and professions, where we lose sight of that. We lose sight of the customer, we lose sight of the family at the end of the day, or we lose sight of the individual that we are serving. And there was none of that was lost when the funeral director was working with Zach's mom. So that's kind of what pushed him. And also, obviously, he didn't really have a great way of remembering his own father. And that's what birthed the idea of the Remember page, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. But he wanted to create a platform that allowed funeral homes to really give back to the funeral director, but also really give back to the family at the end of the day. And so with that, we have a superlative experience and a really modern cloud-based platform that around 750 different funeral homes across the country use today for case management, There's 4 different products with Gather. You got the case management platform. We have Keep Track, which is our integrated body and belonging tracking add-on, and then we also help with funeral home website designs as well as funeral live streaming. So it's been really fun just to see Gather's journey over the years. We've grown to really love just trying to push the envelope and figure what else we can do on the development side to really help our customers at the end of the day and ultimately help the family at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. You guys were very popular, I know, down at the NFDA convention. I kept trying to come over and try to say hi to you or any of your colleagues. I know you had 2 booths, and both booths were just so booming and full that, it looked comfy too. You both had couches. So that was, but I tried to hit up both booths and couldn't get anywhere near you guys. Were so popular with the software. So it really shows the draw that people that had to your product and how important, that is. And that's good. Obviously as part of our profession is to memorialize someone and be able to put that information out there, but also to be able to have the correct information, because we're very reliant on that with multiple people. It's not just like one person that, handles everything. You have everything from the administrative teams to the funeral directors to assistants to people that are coming in and out the door. And, some funeral homes, the same person may handle things from start to finish, but that's, as you get larger firms, that's not the case.
Right.
So it's good, obviously, to make sure everyone has the information. And if I change that cemetery information, I know I'd like to make sure that the person doing the service puts them in the right hole. And that's, that's an actual concern.
Yeah,
so,
it's a very good concern.
And it's something I've encountered. It's something where I, personally, where I'm like, hey, I gave you a deed. Did you look at it? And so when you have databases like this where we can keep track of that, that definitely does that. So what you saying we can memorialize through this remembrance page? What is that about?
Yeah. So basically with every case that is created in Gather's case management platform, there's this beautiful, unique remember page that is a complimentary option for a digital obituary page for the funeral home to offer to the family. And the beautiful part about that is it really is customizable to the fullest extent. You can select a different theme based on that individual's hobbies and passions in life. But also on top of that, the family, friends can come back to that remember page, not only tomorrow, but years from now, to truly honor and remember their loved one. And so they can upload an unlimited number of photos. They can upload an unlimited number of memories. And so one of the coolest stories that I've heard with these remember pages is from one of our customers that's the manager and the funeral director there. He had a mother who had lost her son. And a year had gone by, but a lot of friends of his from high school and from college had actually uploaded a lot of photos as well to this remember page. And that mother came back to the funeral director and just said, "Thank you so much. These are a lot of memories that I would not have gotten an opportunity to cherish of my son had this remember page not been available for me to come back to and remember." And so there's a lot of cool components with it. We've even seen funeral homes take the unique QR code that is provided on each remember page and actually apply it to the headstone at the cemetery for families to come back to and leave photos and leave memories. But there's so many other cool portions of it. I think there's a lot of different obituary pages out there today, but we also have a lot of different custom prompts to help spark some of those memories and help families and friends really take the time to tell a story about that individual and help their legacy live on. And so it's been amazing to see how great of a resource that is for families. And at the end of the day, there's just a lot that the funeral home can do with those. I mean, they can add in photos of the flowers or sympathy gifts or sympathy cards that have been sent in and have the family go back to that and say, "Holy cow, I am so grateful for the tribe and the community around me and around my family that is supporting me during this difficult time." So it's a really special thing. If you ever do want to check them out, hit up our website, www.gather.app, and definitely take some time to just check them out. I'm also feel free to reach out to me personally. I'm more than happy to share a few different examples because just seeing the experience that provides to every family is really powerful. So.
Yeah, no, that's important too, especially in our digital age, because I know when I started working, it was, okay, we need 30 photos, send up 30 photos for the memorial video, or, okay, we're putting a collage together, here's some poster board, and we're putting it, but at the end of the day, when that poster board went away, nobody had that anymore. And
Right.
the amount of work that goes into getting the photos, because, I mean, you get the photos that are within the person's own house. You don't get, like you're saying, nowadays is, we don't have to work about physical photos anymore. And, it's like, okay, you took a picture of me. Can you text that to me? But, with the software nowadays, there's no excuse that we can get those things. It's great to be able to have access, because I like that, being able to memorialize and being able to see things that maybe you weren't even part of that. The friend knew, the son, your son or daughter knew,
Right.
but they're not here anymore.
Right.
And, they're the ones that are friends with them on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. You're not. So how do you get those photos from their friends that are on social media that you can't access anymore? Because
Exactly.
it's all private. It's not like, oh yeah, I was going through their bedroom and I found the shoebox.
Exactly. That and it's just creating a truly tasteful experience and keeping the family in mind at the end of the day with that as well. Because another component, and I know a lot of funeral directors have direct experience with this, but a disgruntled family member or a disgruntled friend might stumble upon one of those remember pages or memorial pages, right? And unfortunately, we do run into the situation where an inappropriate message or an inappropriate photo might be attempted to be posted. But the beautiful part about Gather is, again, we wanted to add in an extra step of protection for the family and the funeral home. Every photo and every memory that is posted to a loved one's remember page is moderated via a blend of also AI, but also human support on our end. For all of those memories and photos to be moderated and make sure that at the end of the day, not only are we helping protect the funeral home's brand and that funeral director's brand, but we're also helping protect the family and also just help protect the loved one's legacy. So yeah, it's rewarding to get to see just how important these remember pages have become to families over the years, and also just to see them coming back year after year and finding new memories or unlocking new stories that they really want to post there to just help remember their loved one. So it's been really cool.
That's awesome. So now with the AI, so AI is automatically detecting keywords, or it's detecting certain things in photos, maybe?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're like a really good situation, and the detection software is so good to the point where even if it's a word that could potentially be categorized as being offensive, the system will still check it, and it gives the funeral home on the back end and Gather the ability to say, hey, I approve this memory or photo to go through, or I don't approve this memory or photo to go through. So great example would be, we'll use me as the example. Let's say that I passed away and you went to my remember page, Dan, and you said, hey, Chase was the biggest fan of sports and just a big personality in the room. That the keyword big, the system is smart enough to say, hey, are you sure that this big is being used in the context that you want it to be used in on that remember page? Please double check and make sure that you're good with this memory being approved for the family and that loved one's remember page. So it's pretty intelligent. It'll give you a little reason as to why it might have been flagged. Otherwise, for the most part, if it looks appropriate and it's from an approved guest on that remember page, it will likely go through. But the cool part about those remember pages is, again, the funeral home and the funeral director have full control over that as well. So let's say that a memory did accidentally get pushed through, maybe by a team member on the funeral home's end that shouldn't have gotten pushed through. The funeral director can always remove that memory if they need to, and they are the only one that can do that. If another visitor goes to that remember page and they find it to be inappropriate, maybe it's a friend or another family member, they can always just flag it or report it, and the funeral home will receive a notification of that on the back end in Gather. So just making sure that at the end of the day, there's a level of reverence that needs to come with every single remember page, and we need to remember that this is a living, breathing memorial that families will come back to, not only tomorrow, but again, 5-10 years down the road to memorialize and just remember their loved one. And so we take that very seriously with the design of the remember pages, and just want to set everyone up to have the best experience possible during one of the worst experiences of their life, and just give them that peace of mind. So,
no, that's extremely important. I mean, it's the worst, every day in our career is somebody's worst day of,
yep.
Their life, that they just lost somebody. And, say people die from just about anything. If you can dream of it in your wildest nightmares, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it could show up at your facility. But yeah, no, we definitely see, and I think that's appreciative. Every family could appreciate that AI and just the ability to flag that, because I mean, I've seen the comments that come in. I know what, even if a friend just thinks that they're funny, it doesn't go over very well with the family. And sometimes the family thinks they're funny, and maybe that's their sense of humor, and they were mad that you didn't publish it.
Exactly.
But you could always publish it if that was their sense of humor, and if that was something, that's how they want to memorialize the guy. But
yeah, exactly.
So I like that the option's there, because we definitely, I know on the back end,
yep,
that's something that I think we've all experienced many, many times over.
100%.
On there, disgruntled or not, the friend thought they were being funny. So
yep.
So the thing. Now we said that you can track bodies as well, and I think that's a great feature, because obviously I don't want to mix anybody up, and that's, I think, a little too easy to do, and people don't realize how easy that could be.
Yep.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how that happens.
Yeah. So Keep Track is actually, it's one of our newer products that we do offer to funeral homes and crematories, and it can be offered as a standalone system, or it can be paired in and integrated with the rest of the case management platform. And really where the birth of Keep Track came from is one of our customers had called into Zach and said, Zach, I had a nightmare last night that I had mixed up a body and gotten sued for millions of dollars, and I don't want to have to do that. So if you could come up with a solution to that, that would be great. And naturally, in Zach's fashion and in Gather fashion, we say, all right, bet. We will go try and find a way to essentially come up with some kind of a solution that will work out. So Keep Track's been developed since then. And again, like what you've kind of alluded to, Dan, is there's a lot that goes on from first call all the way through to final disposition. And all it takes is for one small mistake from a funeral director for a funeral home to get sued for millions of dollars. And we've seen it. We've seen it several different times. Colorado, it's happened out in Colorado. We've had cases of it happening in Illinois, which it's sparking some other conversation, and it is sparking some legislation for some of these states. So in the state of Illinois, they recently came out with the Integrity in Death Care Act, which is essentially saying, hey, effective Jan 1, 2025, funeral homes and crematories in the state of Illinois need to have some formal way of documenting chain of custody, as well as uniquely identifying every decedent that is in their care. So there's new legislation that's coming out on this, and it could essentially be a domino effect for other states, obviously, now that Illinois has passed that. And so what I would advise to funeral homes and crematories is try and get ahead of the curve. I think that there's definitely going to be and I understand where the frustration comes from a lot of the firms that are absolutely doing the right thing. It's another piece of legislation, or it's another requirement, but not only that, you're also just trying to take an extra step to protect your own reputation, because regardless if there's a piece of legislation or not, the risk of a body mix-up or cremated remains mix-up is still very, very relevant. So really, that's how Keep Track came to be. There's a lot of outside factors that are obviously kind of making it a higher important need for a lot of these firms. But pretty much how it works is once a first call comes through, you can initialize the tracking for a decedent right from the system. And then you can configure a tracking whiteboard right in the platform as well, where you can then, from, again, first call all the way through to final disposition, regardless if you have an in-house removal staff or if you work with a third-party removal team, track and say, yep, we picked up the body on this day. We moved the body to the cooler on this day. We moved the body from the cooler to the prep room on this day. So you have a whole running timeline of every tracking step and movement that's taken place for that decedent's care that you can then come back to in the system and say, this is exactly what took place. And what I'll show you too. So the other component is okay, well, how do we uniquely identify every decedent? So the beautiful part about the Keep Track system that pairs with Gather, which don't mind my big forehead, I know I've got a big one, but if you look at this tracking tag, we've got Evelyn Baker right here. This was printed directly from the system. And so We typically recommend, if you do in-house removals and you have an office printer, that can work great. But we also have a recommendation for a mobile printer solution that is just a lot more obviously mobile, agile. If you needed to print off 5 to 10 different copies of the same decedent's tracking label, you could do that as well. But once this has been printed out, all you got to do is, because we have a mobile app, you just scan that QR code right on your phone, and it's going to pull up that case's information where you can then update their physical location in real time and then sign off to verify that you were the employee that completed that step. So it's adding accountability for a lot of the employees to make sure that they're remaining compliant and going about chain of custody appropriately. But again, at the end of the day, it's giving more peace of mind to the entire staff, and it's just going to protect the funeral home's reputation in the long run, because it takes years for a funeral home to build up its reputation in a community. We all know that. We all see that. There's a lot of different marketing ideas and marketing strategies that are coming out to try and expand upon that. But it takes one mistake for that all to be completely tanked. And funeral home owners, business owners, crematory owners need to take that seriously, and make sure that they're trying to get ahead of the curve on that front. So.
No, it's definitely a big issue. And for those, that aren't in the industry, a lot of them may not realize how easy it really is. So I like that, with that ID tag and having that QR code. I mean, I go to, all of a sudden I get a call at 2:00 in the morning. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little half asleep.
Right.
I'm not exactly paying attention. And the address that I wrote on my notepad next to on my nightstand table is a little bit messy. My handwriting, for those that don't know, is extremely messy to begin with. So you can now imagine the squiggly line that's going across that to figure out what the address is. But that's where answering services come in
right.
when they have the app. But so now I look over and I say, oh, okay, got to get this address. But at least I have to go to work. I get that, if I'm at home and I have the ability to print or something, even if I just printed out a piece of paper technically with it, scanned it, then when I got to work, because if I had my own, van at home or something, I get to work, I could still do that. So the process is there.
Yep.
But the fact is that I can say, like, yeah, you didn't just say, yeah, I got a body. Like, that's attached to the body. That tag is literally attached to the individual. Because I know that there's many cases where I've gone out, let's say I've gone to house removal.
Yep.
And I know many of our colleagues listening have done the same thing. You get at the house removal, and then all of a sudden, you're told, hey, there's a there's a decedent at the local hospital. Can you go pick that up on the way? All right, fine. I'm already in the area. I might as well do that.
Right.
Especially if you're traveling into the city to do that. All right, well, look, I moved the house cot over. I use the regular cot, or maybe I carry 2 stretchers with me normally. And I go and do that. Well, I have 2 decedents.
Yep.
They're both 80-year-old ladies with that Q-tip hairdo.
Yep.
I'm sorry, but they look alike. They go into the prep room, and now it was like, all right, which, I put them out. You tag one, or someone held something and they tagged the wrong one. But I was, my father, it was a couple years ago, and there was something that was on the news. And he looked and he says, it was these 2 blonde hair, blue-eyed, 20-something-year-old college students in a specific state. And they both died of the same incident. I don't remember what it was, but they both died in the dorm room together. So you can allude to what the options are. And so they died. They both landed up in the medical examiner's office, both taken out of the same apartment or dorm room, whatever it was. Went to the same medical examiner's office, and one of those was sent to the funeral home in that state where they were from. They were sent to the funeral home, and the family opted to have their son cremated. Their son was cremated. They got an urn back. The other decedent was from a different state on the other side of the country. And when that body landed up in the other state, the family was of a religion where cremation was not going to happen, was not allowed. And they have a viewing for their son, and they looked and they said, that's not our son. That's not our son in the casket. So not just do you have a mix-up, you have a mix-up where the person cremated was not supposed to be the person cremated. That's a big thing. They were of a religion where they should not have been cremated. That's a big problem. And now you have you have 2 families that are at this. So, and cremation is permanent. That's why we do identification viewings, before cremation.
Yep.
So my father was looking at, I remember he was looking at the TV when this came on, and he says, wow, could they possibly have screwed up those two boys? And I'm looking at the photo, and I'm like, yeah, they are two different people. They're not looking like they're twins. They're friends. They were best friends.
Right.
But yeah, they look different enough that I could tell them on the TV screen that they were different people. But I told him, I said, what you don't realize is what they look like when they're dead.
Yep.
Because those two blonde-haired, blue-eyed 20-something-year-olds of the same physical physique, when they come up and they're both on tables next to each other, I'm going to tell you right now, you could give me a photo of both of them, and I probably wouldn't be able to tell you which one was which.
Right.
I said because they look just enough alike.
Yep.
That on the prep table or on the autopsy table at the medical examiners, those two boys would have both had the same post-mortem, problems, swelling and things like that. Their appearance would have been enough that, yeah, I could have mixed them up. I said, I'm going to be honest, I could have mixed them up. But what happened was the medical examiner did do, and to give them credit, they did everything they needed to do. The problem was they were mixed up on the scene. The boys died. They looked similar enough. They died on the same scene. They didn't have their wallets. They were both in their own apartment, dorm or whatever. Their wallets were not on them. Medical examiner took them into custody, and they identified the wrong body as the wrong body on scene because they couldn't tell them apart when they were found. Like, sure, the postmortem,
right?
Pathologies were already underway, and they couldn't tell them apart. They said, "Oh, that one looks like that one. That one looks like that one." Matched them up and tagged them wrong. So it is easy to do. That's the point. Yeah. That's my point. Is that this is very easy to do, and people don't realize. So yeah, no, the value in the track system is to be able to, if I can, track you right then, I can make sure when I get you to the destination that, because I don't want that on my record.
I was just going to say, it's not only the funeral home's reputation, but it's the funeral director's reputation that can be on the line too. And I mean, getting to the dilemma of identification, it's a very, very real thing. My boyfriend, we joke about it all the time. There'll be times where I'm in the store and then someone's right next to me and he's like, I can't tell which one's you. I'm like, what are you talking about? I've been with you for 4.5 years and you still can't tell me apart from some other Joe Schmo in the store. And so, yeah, you take it to the next level where all of a sudden they're in the prep room. Yeah, you got to make sure that you're covering all of your bases and that you're delivering the right kind of care. So, and that's a massive component of it. I mean, it's it's another piece of work, but you want to make sure that you're doing it appropriately and you're doing it correctly. So,
absolutely. And the other thing too is, I mean, just the sheer amount of people involved. At 2:00 in the morning, I may not get out of. I mean, I'll get out of bed myself, but I may not. I might be busy. I might be running a funeral.
Exactly.
And if I'm running the funeral, then I'm going to send in Massachusetts where I reside, we can have funeral assistants. So funeral assistant can be registered and they can do transport only. They can drive you to and from the crematory. They can go do removals. But, or I send my apprentice, or I send another director, or I have a transfer company that does it.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, that decedent arrives in my prep room. Now, I arrive at a different time, and if that body's not properly tagged, I walk in, and there could be multiple people in the prep room. I'm going to go in, and I'm going to embalm, and that's not the time to put the tag on and say, oh, yeah, this is this person.
Right.
How do I know? How do I know that you brought him to the right prep room? I'm tagging somebody, and you brought him to one of the other prep rooms for one of our other locations.
Right.
I mean, so I do. Yeah, you scan them, at least I can look, and I think administratively, as you said, and I always tell the students the same thing about a embalming report, which I know you have integrated as well, is, if, that is your legal thing. If all of a sudden someone sues me and they say, you didn't do your job, here's negligence.
Yep.
I'm going to want to go back to that record and say, there's a timestamp here that says we did get that person did go to the prep room, that person was embalmed, and that person did land up in a casket. I'm sorry they landed up in the wrong casket, landed up right front, but I can verify that we did have the right person and we did put the person in a casket. It's just the wrong casket landed up there.
Yep.
But how do I prevent that? Easy. I print a second tag, I put a tag on the handle of the casket, boom, I scan the casket. I now know who's in that casket.
Yep.
Or put the nicer way to do that for those that are in the industry that are listening in, it would be to take some nice like brass plaque and you put, Mrs. Down,
right.
Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Edwards name on the plaque. And now it's like, oh, this is a complimentary. We put plaques in everyone's casket. No, that's so I can identify your mother.
Yes.
But no, that's the thing. And then, same thing with the embalming report. If you don't write it in that embalming report, it didn't happen. Anybody that's ever been at, been to court, they ask the officer, your lawyer's asking the officer, what was the temperature that day? What was the weather that like that? And they're like, I don't know what the hell the weather was like.
Yep.
Case dismissed because he can't remember the weather that day. He sure as hell doesn't remember what happened to your car.
Right.
Well, the reality was he wasn't paying attention to the weather, and it was 6 months ago by the time he got to court, or a year ago before he got to go to court. And the same thing with your embalming. They could catch you on something. If you have it in writing, they can't tell. The prosecutor can't say you did something you didn't do. But if you didn't put that in writing,
Yep.
and that's not in the gather system saying you did something.
Yep.
Well, guess what? You did whatever the prosecutor just told you did.
Yep.
So, and I like I said, you have an embalming feature as well. Maybe you can tell us about that and how can we keep ourselves out of court?
Yeah. So the other component that's cool with Keep Track and Gather in general is you can create as many custom tasks and tracking steps as you want. And so when you're creating a tracking step in the system, you can match it to match your firm's processes that you have today. Essentially, instead of doing it on paper, your employee is able to do it straight from their phone and get all that information logged into the system for future reference. And so we've seen firms actually build out a digital embalming report where they can set up all the standard embalming questions, suture questions, get all that information into the embalming report, and then complete it. And then they'll have a running track record of all of those notes that are in the system. You can also set it up that maybe there's a few steps that have to be completed before you can proceed with other steps in a case's care. And really what goes into that is you can set up prerequisites in the system too. So before I can actually proceed with the cremation, we need to do that identification viewing, or we need to complete some of these other steps, or we need to complete forms, right? So you can configure exactly what you want that process to look like for, even if you're a single location or a multi-location firm, you can set all of that up with so much ease. And so kind of I want to get back to the mobile component a little bit too. So like with this embalming report, the beautiful part about Gather is fully cloud-based. And so a lot of our firms actually have the mobile app right on their phone too. We were talking about it a little bit earlier with being able to scan the QR code, pop open that app, and update the case's information. A lot of it, it just gives not only the owner or the manager, but it gives all the employees the ability to take that funeral home in their pocket anywhere they go. So if there is a family question on the embalming and what kind of went into it, you can just pull up the case information. Let's say you completed the embalming report and Gather and pull that information up on your phone and just easily get that family question answered. So just seeing the flexibility that the system provides is really, really fun. And obviously the embalming report is a really cool use case of funeral homes and crematories innovating using the tracking steps in Gather and setting it up to really match what their flow looks like. But just probably one of the cooler stories that I've heard on the mobile component with the mobile app of Gather is one of our customers. He was actually at the barbershop getting his haircut. Okay. And he planned on going back into the funeral home right after, but he needed to go get his haircut, look good for the next service, make sure that, he's got the sides faded, right? But he ended up talking with me about it because I do a lot of the case study interviews with our customers as well and try to learn about some of those real world use cases. And he had gotten a death call while he was sitting in the barber chair getting his haircut, and had set up and scheduled the cremation arrangement all from his phone. Instead of being tethered to getting a call at 2 a.m. and having to go into the funeral home or having to pull open a laptop, you don't have to do that. You no longer have to do that in 2024. You don't. So.
No, it's incredible. I remember when death certificates, unrelated, but death certificates became electronic in our state, in the Commonwealth. And I remember everyone was, like, how is this going to happen? I like my paper. I like my typewriter. And I was like waiting for the riot on the streets. But, it's like, all right, guys, this technological error, I think we can handle technology today. And, but at that time, and I said, look, you're paying me to drive 3 hours to go get a doctor to sign a death certificate sometimes, just to drive back, find out there was an error, and I got to drive back again. So
Yep.
At the end of the day, I just literally I typed everything into the system from my phone, my tablet, or my computer.
Mm-hmm.
I sent that in, and all of a sudden, I sent them a fax with that sheet. They had to sign the paper.
Yep.
And when they faxed that back to me, I had an e-fax. I came to my phone. I took it and I said, all right, save the document. I went onto the app. I went not the app, but I went to their website. I did everything I could. It was clunky, unlike Gather, it's clunky, on your phone, but a little clunky, but I made it happen. I kind of got it. I just did what I needed to. I could upload the fax document and I could release the case.
Mm-hmm.
And now I had the barrel permit and the death certificate. I did all, and I love that. But, that's the technological era that we're in, is that we do need to be mobile. We do need to be places. And the other thing too, is we're always tethered to the funeral home. That means you don't, we worry about not having a family time. We worry about not being able to do things. You're at the game, okay, you have game time, you have family time, you have work time. But in this world, we can't separate. There's no line of deviation. You're at the barbershop and you get a death call, you take the death call. When you're at, you're at your son's game, you take the phone call because that is your job. But what allowed you to be that game was the ability to not be tethered to the funeral home, because otherwise you would have never been able to get to that game. So you got to go to the game. You just have to do a little work while you're there. And, and then I like that tracking too, of all of a sudden, oh yeah, you can go see see your husband do an ID. Yes. I can look right up on my phone and I can say, oh, they scanned your husband into the fridge at this location, or they, hey, because if all of our embalming is done at one location out of 8.
Yep.
Which is common. We're doing a lot more centralized embalming now.
Yep.
And I love that feature, to be able to look and say, okay, yeah, not a problem, Mrs. Smith. Why don't we go to this funeral home? Because I know that your husband is still at the funeral home that he was embalmed at. Or, oh, wait a minute, it looks like they scanned him into the van. They scanned him into the funeral home that he's going to. He's already at the funeral home that he's going to be at for the calling hours. You can go see your husband up there. And I can tell her that location. Otherwise, I'm now making phone calls, and that's the day and age that I was working, was now you're making the phone call. Okay, where's the body? Where's it? Well, I think I put it there. Oh no, somebody was transporting it. Who's transporting it?
Yeah.
And I love that tracking to say this is exactly where it is. And with the embalming, as you said, with the report is, what happens all of a sudden. You're like, hey, I had this case. Hey, I had a case just like that I did about 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what the chemicals I used worked great, or they didn't work.
Right.
And I don't want to do that again. What do I do? And I can look that up. It's all in one place. It's electronic. I don't have to worry about what the file cabinet was.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about what hard drive I saved it on. I love with just even the nice thing with databases in general, from my perspective, would be, hey, I want the same thing for Dad. Mm-hmm. And you're rummaging through a file cabinet trying to figure out where Dad's file is, and it was put in some shoebox somewhere else.
Yep.
And now you're trying to figure out where Dad's file was from 1972 when you buried him.
Yep.
I wasn't a director back then. How do I know what you did with Dad? And obviously neither was Gather. But but we could go back as far as that technology allows us now.
Yep.
And I could say, I know what casket he used. I know how he was embalmed. I know where he went. I know what church he went to. You can't remember the name of St. Mary's, but I could find it.
Yep. More flexibility, more flexibility, more scalability. The owner could sleep well at night knowing that if they had a medical emergency and they were out for 2 or 3 months, everything's going to be just fine. Like, you have all the data that you need in the system to come back to. There's just been so many cool opportunities for funeral homes, from increasing, contract value is a big thing right now with direct cremation versus traditional burial. You talk about struggles with collections sometimes from specific families. In Gather, you can text or email out a payment link and get that collection rate up for a certain month. We've had funeral homes that wanted to get trying to explore different ways to offer value to families. And maybe one of those ways was to offer at-home arrangements. Well, with Gather, you can do that now. You can take an iPad, or you could even take your phone and walk through your entire showroom or general price list right on the app, and walk through that with the family in real time. So there's just, I think one of the biggest words that I like to use, and there's so many buzzwords out there nowadays, right? But just flexibility. And another thing that I like hitting on too is, I think there's a big push for marketing right now in the funeral space. And the best form of marketing is customer experience. At the end of the day, That is
100%.
where you can truly leave your mark. Word of mouth will always, always, always be king or queen in this profession. And Gather allows each firm, even large multi-location firms, to tailor that customer experience or that family experience on a case-by-case basis. If you have a family that doesn't necessarily want to use the family portal, great. You don't have to utilize that component within Gather if you don't want to with that family. Maybe you have a family that happens to be a lot more fragmented, and you know that next of kin lives in a different state, so they need to do everything remotely. Great, let me email out that signature packet so they can collect it that way. I can then also kick over the statement of goods and services for them to review. So there's so many different cool little components, and it's fun to see how each business uses Gather just a little bit differently. And that's the fun part. And obviously there's always ways that Gather can improve too. And so we take a lot of that feedback that we get from a lot of our different funeral homes and crematories, and we just want to keep pushing the envelope forward to, again, not only help the funeral director in the funeral home, but really also help the family. We want to make sure that we're keeping the family experience and the customer experience at the front of everything that we are building over here. So,
no, it's important. And I mean, I see everything beneficial here because, again, a lot of the software that we work with,
yep,
it does tether us to that funeral home where this is on this computer, you're licensed on this computer, we're on another computer, and you're tethered to a building. So, that's just not how society works anymore. And your notes may have been on paper at one point in time, and you may have been carrying files around with you in a suitcase at one point in time. That's not the day and age anymore. If it's digital, why do you want to be tied to now you have to go to the computer? I can't carry the computer with me. And what am I going to print out every file and carry it? No. So at least I have access and I can add things. And that's the other thing too, is I know forever, just even in my job with the education, at the college, if I get, student information unrelated to the funeral home, but if I get student information, by the time I get back to my computer, I'm like, all right, hold on. Now I got to remember who was on that, who needed what, who needed this class, who needed that class, who needed to be cleared for something. It's so much better when I have access to, because even that, I have software that I can access on my phone. And I can look things up. And I have other ones where I'm like, this is the software I need to put student notes in so that the advisors know what's going on with a student. And that's the software I don't have access to on the phone. That's the software that I need an app for. And they're like, oh, there's a student version of that, but not the faculty. I'm like, the faculty is the one that needs the access. The faculty is the one that needs to be able to say, I'm putting a note in that this is the student schedule. These are the changes. These are the things. That's what I need, not the other software. So I think, there's value to that, being able to get things in the moment. But having everything under one roof. And I think that's the key balance I see with what you're doing, is that it's accessible and that it's all under one platform, and I'm not going between 5 different pieces of software that don't communicate and type in the same information 5 times over.
Right.
I'm doing that once.
Exactly. And the other thing that I'd add there too, and you know it better than I do, but there's so many funeral homes out there that have been in business for 75, 100, 125 years, and they want to future-proof the business and continue to help it grow. But God forbid, what happens if the building burns down? What happens with all of that information that you had for all of the families that you've served over the years? It goes out the window. And so if a business owner really wants to future-proof and help the business grow in the long term, it is important to have, and it doesn't have to be Gather, right? But to have some kind of a system or some kind of a software where that data lives. It lives in a cloud. It lives in a place for where you can come back to it. It's your secure information for you to work off of. And that's a massive, massive question that, although we look at it, it's that question that we stare at and we say, oh, it'll never happen to us. Truth is, it can happen. It can happen to anyone. And so I think bringing that up is very important. And to kind of expand upon that too, data is also another massive, massive piece of the pie right now for, I think, a lot of firms that are trying to better understand the target market, understand how they can remain competitive in the market, and just also understand their new consumers and what they kind of prefer and how they prefer to operate. And with that being said, I can talk a little bit about this. I'm sure Zach will be like, Chase, you're getting ahead of the curve a little bit. But we're working on our latest innovation called Gather Analytics. So it's essentially going to be a fully robust custom reporting suite that allows either, a single location firm, or it could be an 120 location firm, to generate any kind of insights that they're looking from data that's been entered into the Gather system. So it's based on 11 different data sources or objects, and then over 525 data properties. So case financial data, remember page engagement, task activity. If you wanted to look at contracts line items, or maybe if you wanted to generate a collections by funeral director report, it doesn't matter what kind of a report you're trying to build. We've built this custom reporting suite to offer that flexibility for you to generate insights about your business that you have not had in years. And so we're really excited about, obviously, not only is Gather a great resource on that front, but we believe that the data is ultimately the funeral homes and the funeral directors at the end of the day, and we want to make sure that they can leverage it as much as possible. So
yeah, absolutely. As an epidemiologist, I appreciate that too, because
Yeah.
the amount of times I've had to pull out files, and you're going through and you're like, hold on, let me make a list. This is how many people, this is this person. Nope, that one didn't get that,
Right.
and
Right.
so just be able to pull that data up is vital. That's why death records, that was the biggest thing when death records went electronic, was just because when all of a sudden, when you saw a spike in a cause of death,
Yeah.
you could determine public health emergency. The same thing. If you have that data, I mean, my question is, how many funeral directors have time on their day to sit there with a file cabinet going through, or if you have software on your computer that you're like, hold on, now I got to go through screen by screen. Okay, did this one have this? This one had this, and I'm trying to count how many caskets I've sold of a certain type, or I'm trying to count. Yeah, exactly. As you say, collections, and I got to do that. So just to be able to pull that up saves you one time,
Yep.
but it's also gonna allow you to see changes, or like, oh, when's the last time my location sold that casket? I need to,
Yep.
does it belong in the showroom, or just simple things and complicated things.
Yes. Well, and on
you know.
top of that, it's like the cool part about that is I can't wait in 3 or 4 years. There's going to be people way smarter than me that are becoming the Gather Analytics professionals that have built every possible type of report that you can think of in Gather.
Yeah.
And serve as a resource for their other peers out there in the space. I am excited about that. That type of stuff is ultimately it's going to be such a great resource for so many people out there, and just really help push the space forward. So
absolutely, just to even know where your customers are from. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, that's the thing too, is we're not even. I mean, I know there was a day and age where you turned and you're like, oh, somebody died in town, it's going to come to us.
Right.
Now the day and age is, we're flying people in and out constantly. So to know, like, oh yeah, I got a decedent, I had 5 decedents this year from Ohio, 1 from Michigan, 3. Well, guess what? Maybe I need to know that where my market is. I need to know that my market's not my town. It's 5 towns over.
Right.
Seems to be the ones coming to me. Maybe I need to advertise in those newspapers because that's the market I got,
Right.
or maybe I need to realize that I'm not getting people from my town. Maybe I need to market my own town.
Right.
So, definitely, no, analytics is huge.
Yeah.
Can't live without that.
It's massive. Massive.
Oh,
So.
Absolutely. No, I'm very excited about the platform and everything you guys have offer. And I know we're using Gather at the college,
Good.
For our students to learn. And, they're very appreciative for the partnership we have with Gather to provide them the resource so that when they come out, they are working with the software that they're going to, whether or not they use Gather, they're going to know how to use this software.
Yep.
So that the employers don't have time to teach people. And that's one thing. We're very busy in the industry. So if they don't learn it, they're coming out and it's like, and I know even just, in my own experience,
Mm-hmm.
getting out there, all of a sudden it was 9:00 at night and they're like, hey, we need this. And I got a phone call and I got to rush in, do whatever needed to be done. And because the secretaries were not there, nobody else was there, I got a call from the assistant said, hey, we need more of this, we need more of that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or, hey, we got a removal. you need to pull up the pre-need and figure out what's going on at 9:00 at night. Nobody else is there.
Yep.
So, but was anybody there to train me how to do that? No, I knew the password, but nobody trained me how to do this. Nobody let me into the software. Nobody taught me how to make more, even memorial videos or prayer cards or anything.
Right.
It was, there's software, and I went on there. I troubleshooted at 9:00 at night. Maybe it took me an extra couple hours to do it that night, but the next time I was like, I know how to do that now.
Teach a man to fish, right? That's
right.
really...
I was throwing the deep end, but at the end of the day, that's where my mission with the college too is
Mm-hmm.
these students are going to come out, and I know my colleagues across the country do the same thing. These students are now coming out with software like Gather, and all the other, whether it be video or prayer cards or anything. We work with Messenger for prayer cards and Tukios for videos and all that. But
awesome, yeah.
When they come out, they're coming out with the experience of doing a complete mock service in our classroom. When they walk out, they can tell the employer, I used Gather. I know where data goes. And even if you don't use Gather, I know where data should be there, because Gather has everything that you should have. So I'm using yours. I don't know where this is, but I know this prompt should be there. And I'm looking for it because I know that this prompt there, and I knew that it should be there because I've used software where it was there. I just need to figure out where it is today on this software.
Right.
So it does. Yeah, these students are going to be much more valuable coming out with that experience, which is excellent.
Massive. It's absolutely massive, and it's needed, right? I think there's a lot of forward thinking, a lot of innovation, a lot of new ideas that are coming to the forefront in this space, and in a profession that really needs that right now, I think it's definitely really valuable. And obviously, we love getting to work with you guys in your program, and I just obviously excited to have the students continue to dive more into Gather. There's going to be questions. There's going to be also just a lot of great feedback too, right? We're always iterating over here. There's going to be future ideas and opportunities. And so the cool part is we can now collaborate with Cape Cod and say, hey, what are some great ideas that we can use to really push case management software for funeral homes and crematories. And so just really excited about the partnership, and obviously grateful for us to have connected. And I wish we could have gotten more time at NFDA too. I really do. I was literally busy the entire time, running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I already told you the last day, sweating my butt off, just trying to Uber over to the airport and catch the flight in time. But just excited that we were able to meet together a little bit in person. And obviously there's going to be a lot of cool new ideas that come from this down the road too. So
no, absolutely. Yeah, no, you guys were extremely busy at FDA. And I never saw your booth not have people lined up. It was like a line. You need one of those red velvet ropes in order to.
It's the couches. It's the couches.
It was the couches. It was definitely your couches. Yeah, but you really did. You needed a velvet rope for people waiting in line to get, because you had two booths and they were both busy. Maybe you need three next year just to handle a crowd. But they had, and one of your booths was much bigger than the other too. So you had double the booth on one side. I noticed. Yeah. So really, you did have three booths technically. Yeah. And you were still full in thing, but and with the software too. So I was thinking too is people have different access, right? So they have, so there's people that could change things, and then you could have levels of people within your funeral home, because I know that would be concern if I'm going, crap, this my colleague over here is going to change things and mess something up. I could give the computer illiterate individual that works with me at least access to put things in, but not mess anything up, right? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. That's conflict of interest. You run into a lot of different things. You have funeral directors, or you have location managers that do need to see financials from a month-to-month basis, but then maybe your apprentice or an intern or someone along those lines doesn't necessarily need to see that or have that be distracting pieces of information. So you can configure security and permissions on not only a user by user basis, but again, the scalability factor of Gather for those multi-location firms. You can control what locations a particular user in Gather has access to. So maybe you have an office manager for one location, but you actually want to expand them into an area manager to cover 4. Great. You can absolutely set them up with access to also be an admin for those other 3 locations that are kind of falling under their umbrella as well. Or vice versa. Maybe someone wants to scale back a little bit in their work and they only want to work on one location and not necessarily 3 different ones. And maybe it's because of life, maybe it's because of family, whatever it might end up being, but you can absolutely customize their permissions on that level too. So it's really powerful, scalable, and just excited to continue improving. There's a lot of awesome opportunities out there for Gather, and we're expanding as well. We definitely want to put a little bit more into the development bucket as well, and so that's another big piece of the pie for us as well. But
it's always good to be the growing company and
yeah,
always having an endeavor under your belt, and that's good because if you're the ones that are growing, that means you're not you don't want to be with you don't want to. I know I wouldn't want to sign up with the software that's on a downturn, that's becoming stagnant.
Right.
Especially, in a growing industry, I don't want to go stagnant. You want the ones that are growing and looking at the next development. That's what Gather seems to be doing, is growing with the industry, which is awesome.
It's fun. And what I would say too, just coming from the sales perspective as well, is I never understood just how diverse, complex, and how large the landscape really is in this space. But the really cool part about that is, like, I'm so happy that funeral homes and crematories at least have the choice. They get the choice at the end of the day. They're not stuck to just one option or one provider. There's going to be more providers that come out. There's going to be more innovators in this space that really try to help push the bill forward. And so I think above everything else, I'm so grateful that there's so many different options for providers out there, because we're all going to continue to push each other in that regard, and make sure that we can also just push the solution that we've got to an even more elevated space for a lot of these death care professionals. So it's fun. I don't take my job for granted a single day in my life. I love getting to talk with funeral directors. I've come to learn that funeral directors probably have the best sense of humor out of any kind of person that you'll meet. Although sometimes it's morbid. If you ended up meeting up with a funeral director in a bar, you're going to hear some jokes and you're going to hear some stories that might make you turn your head just not once, maybe twice, but just kind-hearted, people-oriented, service-oriented. And, in the day-to-day, when you're busy, when you're burnt out with everything that's happened in this space over the past couple of years, even with COVID, you can sometimes lose sight of that. And I think at the end of the day, Gather's goal is to help you find that vision again, find that purpose. So
no, you need that purpose. And as we were talking about data management, even many crematories will put their cremated remains in a fireproof file cabinet, which, at first thought is like, why did you put something that was already went through the retort in a fireproof cabinet? But,
right.
The point is, obviously, if there's a fire, even cremated remains will mix. And the last thing you want to give back to family is saying, this is your loved one, I know. So if that's important to a crematory, your data management should be important to the funeral home, to make sure that, I have tracking to say, hey, Dan's the one that took that body out, because I can see a tracker on there that says, Dan's the one that did that. Dan, you're the one that's responsible. Where the hell's this body?
Right.
Right. Or, Dan, you're the one that typed this in. Where'd you get this information from? Or, you said there was a bill paid. Where's the check?
Right.
So even though as a manager, at least I know who did what and things like that. So your data management is important. And absolutely. But no, I can't recommend Gather enough. Again, our students love it, and we're very glad to have you on the podcast. And as you have those various developments, as they keep going, we'll have to have you back to tell us all about the newest and latest and greatest and developments that as you have it.
Absolutely. Always a party, Dan. Appreciate you having me on. And we'll definitely be in touch. There's going to be some exciting announcements with Gather in the future for sure. So
that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Mortuary Mayhem. For links to information discussed during this episode, please visit the website at www.mortuarymayhem.com. Do you have questions, comments, suggestions for topics, or want to be a guest on the show? Email us at podcast@mortuarymayhem.com. We should do this again sometime.